SBC Media.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
The Thanksgiving holiday in the United States has long been considered a time not just for community and family, but a time to reflect on how the country has historically treated its indigenous populations. It's fitting, then, that today on iGaming Daily, we're going to take a look at tribal relationships in both California and Florida, namely what the latest news is regarding tribes and sports betting in the state. I'm Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas and Canadian Gaming Business, joined by my senior journalist, Charlie Horner. Charlie, you don't get to celebrate Thanksgiving, but is there any Thanksgiving food you've seen that you're like, ooh, I would try that?
See, the interesting thing is that I just think Thanksgiving is just Christmas just 4 weeks early. So it just seems like you're having turkey and all your Christmas food, but you just want it a little bit earlier than the rest of us. So I do hope that all the American listeners have a great Thanksgiving, and particularly you, Jess.
Yeah, I'm going to cook and make all, as I said on a previous pod, all the carbs. That's what Thanksgiving is. It's less about the turkey and it's more about the sides. Neither here nor there. Of course, before we head into the Thanksgiving break in the U.S., there was more activity on the Florida sports betting case. We have that case. We have the California case. We're just going to give you guys what you need to know as we get into the home stretch of the year on both of these cases. So, Charlie, you and I have both kind of been on Florida, but I will let you lead the charge here. What's the latest in general when it comes to Florida sports betting?
Okay, so I had to quickly go back and listen to where we left off the last time we spoke about Florida, because it was only 4 weeks ago, but a lot has happened in those 4 weeks. So the latest development is that West Flagler has asked the Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, I must add, for an extension for it to file its writ of certiorari. Am I pronouncing that word right?
I think it's certiorari, but I'm not positive. I get all, you know what? My mind was blown the other day when someone told me it's amicus brief. I was like, that can't be right. So my Latin is not where it needs to be.
No, I must admit I skipped Latin classes at school. But they've requested to an extension until February to file their case fully. Essentially because they want to find out what's going to happen in the Florida Supreme Court, because that determines the course of action that they want to take in the federal at the federal level.
Yeah, so brief, civics lesson on this. So writ of cert, as it tends to get abbreviated and to something I can pronounce, is essentially the request of the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, the U.S. Supreme Court, to hear a case. And when you do that, it's not like other courts at the lower level where they have to hear it and have to make a decision. Supreme Court can kind of choose, it's worth us hearing, it's worth us not hearing. And really, they only choose to hear stuff if they feel like it's got broader implications than just Florida. And I think because so much of what is going on in this case involves how to interpret the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act as it pertains to online gambling, there is an argument that this would impact other states. You mentioned the state Supreme Court case. I think the last time we were on here, we mentioned that this case, it's all a whirlwind to me where we left off, but that case is kind of pursuing concurrently. What's the latest with that case?
Okay, so it's worth just recapping what's happened in the last 4 weeks. So when we last spoke about this, the Supreme Court had ordered a temporary stay on Hard Rock Bet.
This is the federal Supreme Court.
The federal Supreme Court, yes. probably less than 2 weeks later, that had expired, and they had lifted the stay and denied an injunction for the entire period of when it would hear this case. That opened up the possibility for the Seminole tribe to launch Hard Rock Bet. November the 1st, they announced that they would intend to launch retail during December. On November the 7th, they went live-ish. They soft-launched online and mobile betting for people who were already registered in December 2021 when it was last live. So then West Flagler filed with the Florida Supreme Court to suspend the app in the state. That has now been rejected. Meanwhile, the state Supreme Court is still waiting to hear back from Governor DeSantis to respond, and he has until December the 1st to file his response to West Flagler's original filing at the state level, which says that he had no authority to sign a compact with the Seminole tribe.
It's almost like a tongue twister, or like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, trying to remember what is going on in each of these. Yeah, the retail point, I think it's worth noting. I don't think any part of this legal challenge is concerned with the retail bit of it, particularly because the Circuit Court of Appeals case said this compact, as it pertains to betting on tribal lands, is completely on the up and up and completely within the realm of IGRA. The DOI, the Department of the Interior, had every right to sign off on it. The real question is, can a tribal compact trigger statewide online sports betting? And I think Justice Brett Kavanaugh at the federal level, I assume the Europeans have heard of him after all of the things we've dealt with regarding Brett Kavanaugh over the years. With the Supreme Court, there's decisions, and then that came in from Chief Justice John Roberts, but other justices can offer kind of secondary opinions, or, there's a dissenting opinion in cases often. And with the denial of the stay of the mandate, Brett Kavanaugh kind of voiced, okay, well, we do need to pay attention to what's happening at the state level, because if the state is going to let this happen, statewide, this is probably a question of if it, we at least need to question, does this violate IGRA? And also, is this a 14th Amendment violation, which civics lesson again. The 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, means that you can't give preferential treatment to people based on race or participation in a particular group or social sect. So if you're giving something only to the Seminole tribe that's not available to everyone else, it might trigger a 14th Amendment violation. That's kind of why they want the extension in the Supreme Court, correct, Charlie? Is to see how this state case plays out? Yeah,
they would just want to see, what the state court rules, and, they do heavily reference what Kavanaugh said, that, there are serious equal protection issues of just solely and exclusively giving the Seminole tribe sports betting. Yeah, I think they want to see what happens in the state court, because that could affect how the Supreme Court of the United States could read the case.
Yeah, it was interesting. I believe it was Daniel Wallach, who, if you're not following him and you're curious about this case, is the best person to follow, as he is an attorney and follows this, kind of noted the gamesmanship that kind of goes on with these filings. As Charlie mentioned, Governor DeSantis and the state of Florida asked for an extension until December 1st. They essentially were just like, listen, we're real busy. And that was the extent of the arguments they offered. But Wallach had pointed out, well, we've seen that West Flagler had made a commitment to try and file their writ of cert in the federal Supreme Court by November 20th. So it gives it would give an opportunity for Florida to see what they're going to argue in the state case by seeing what the writ of cert is at the federal level. And now it's kind of the tables have turned, and West Flagler is just going to, they're not even being cagey about it. They're just like, listen, we're not doing this, preferably, until we see what the argument is going to be at the state level, because we don't want to have to navigate two cases where in one case somebody's arguing one thing and in another case somebody's arguing a different point.
Don't you just love litigation and the whole process that goes along with it?
Is it weird that I kind of am getting to be a sucker for this?
I appreciate the pettiness on both sides, I think.
Yeah, a piece of me wants to believe the U.S. court system is this immaculate creation of justice and everything. And then it's like, oh, no, actually, it's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork and a certain degree of spite.
I mean, I think it does go to highlight the real complexity with this case, because like you alluded to earlier, it really is an interpretation, or it's clarifying the interpretation of IGRA, and it could have very serious consequences elsewhere. So I think it's really important that people take time, and the legal system, really considers this process heavily to ensure that it comes up with a sensible solution that doesn't cause chaos in other states, and make sure that there's a fair deal between the tribes and the states and the federal government.
It's kind of a tale of two coasts, that on Florida you have an extreme amount of discussion and debate and care going into how this is going to work. And then in California, I almost feel like, I don't know if this is a film reference you'll get, Charlie, that it's like the Big Lebowski guys kind of decided, like, hey man, we should get tribal sports betting in California. Like, the word bro has been thrown out a lot in this California situation. Charlie, you covered a bit about Prop 26 last year. That did not work out well for the tribes the last time they tried to do sports betting.
No, it didn't. I mean, the 2022 election cycle is infamous for how badly it went for everyone. Prop 26 failed miserably. Prop 27 failed miserably. There was over $600 million worth of campaigning funds that was wasted on those campaigns. And I feel like one of the main reasons for why it failed was that there was a lack of clear communication on both sides, which really sets up what we're about to talk about now, because it really feels like there's been a lack of communication once again.
Yeah, it's different parties, though, I will say. Prop 26 and 27, it was major operators like DraftKings and FanDuel pushing 27, and tribes, by and large, pushing 26. There are 110 tribes in the state of California. So when I am talking about this, understand that no situation is 110 tribes are in favor of it and 0 are against it. That's not necessarily, it's just not common. There's different interests. Some tribes don't do gaming, so they would have no interest in tribal gaming. And the agendas of each group kind of vary. That being said, Prop 26 and 27 failed miserably, as we all know. And I think the sentiment in the room was, nobody should even bother in 2024. We need a break. This did not go well. Let's regroup. And then at the end of October, kind of out of nowhere, this last minute filing for a ballot initiative came about called the Tribal Gaming Protection Act, where it would legalize tribal online sports wagering and retail sports wagering in the state if passed. It was kind of late in the game to get like a ballot initiative together in general, to just give you an idea like what it will take for this to happen. The initiative is filed now. They have to wait 65 days from October 30th before they can even begin to collect signatures. And the signatures you need to make the ballot amount to 875,000. And you have until the end of April to get nearly 1 million people to agree that this is something that they want to be on the ballot. These ballot initiatives, just to get on the ballot, costs millions of dollars in marketing and mounting a campaign and collecting. So the fact that they're not even going to, October 30th, it's going to be early January before they can even start collecting signatures, puts them very much behind the 8 ball, even if it was a fully mounted campaign. This is not a fully mounted campaign.
No, I'm interested. I want to hear more about the the bros. How have
yes,
these
the
people
bros.
managed to get involved?
Yeah, this Tribal Gaming Protection Act is kind of tribal in name only. The two guys behind this, essentially, are Reeve Collins and Casey Thompson. These two guys are not completely unfamiliar with the world of tribal betting. They were part of Pela Interactive, which, worked with the Pela tribe, and they have some experience there, but they're not members of tribes. They're not speaking on behalf of tribes. They just filed this thing. And then we're like, hey, tribes, aren't you excited that we did this for you? And the answer so far has been no, we're not. At the time of filing, this was the original response from the California Nation's Indian Gaming Association. The CNIGA is deeply disappointed that the sponsors of the two recently filed initiatives did not first reach out to the state's largest tribal gaming association for consultation and input. Instead, CNIGA and our member tribes were alerted to their existence when they were filed. So, bad move, right? They finally get into a room with CNIGA last week, I think it was. Yes, last week. And CNIGA talks to them and is even less impressed with what they are suggesting, that they vote unanimously 18-0, that not only do we not know anything about this, but we actively oppose it. I've heard the name Casey Thompson. It's fair to call him a poker bro. He's been around in various poker roles over the years, and it seems like poker people always kind of pop up in gaming. Reeve Collins is more on the tech side, and I think some crypto things. Play USA had an interview with them where Casey Thompson basically was saying, and I hope I'm getting this right, that their idea is to go out and acquire black market sports betting and online casino sites. And then they'll hold them and whitewash them and make them clean over the course of 4 or 5 years, and then give them to the tribes in exchange for a cut of the action. For those who don't know, there are groups that have been considered bad actors that have kind of cleaned up and come into the United States. Poker Stars is the best example of this. Generally, it involves, as it did with Poker Stars, like a settlement with the Department of Justice, a relatively hefty financial fine, and in some cases, prison time. So the idea that you're just going to buy Bovada, whitewash it, and hand it over to someone is bonkers. Yeah, Charlie, you're not as enmeshed in poker as I am, but reading the things you've read, it sounds a little kooky.
Yeah, it's insane. It's this is the most populous state in the US. This is the big state that everyone wants to see launch at some point. This would be the biggest market, one of the biggest markets in North America, in the world. And it's just a mess. It was a mess the first time around. It's just chaotic this time around. I think you're right. I think after the 2022 defeat, everyone just wanted to take some time away, go away, lick the wounds, come back in 2026, 2028, and try and do it then. For this to happen now is just, it's a mess once again. And it's just losing support rather than gaining support, I think.
The other thing that's funny to me is that truly the sentiment very clearly from the tribes after this was, hey, talk to us, work with us. You're not going to succeed here unless we work together. And these guys just massively misread the room and decided they were going to swoop in and do it for them. It feels like in 10 years that Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill are going to play these guys in some sort of Judd Apatow comedy of how this went down. Casey Thompson and Reeve Collins have alleged they have the funding necessary to move forward for this. I will also note that he told Mike Mazzio of Legal Sports Report that, so far only 18 tribes have technically opposed us because the vote at this CNIGA thing was 18-0. And talk about some spin to be like, well, only 18 have opposed us. Well, buddy, can you name one of the 110 that are in favor of this? Because as far as I can tell, not one has come forward and said, yes, we're on board with this. Let's go.
Yeah, well, if he says that he's got the funding to make this happen, then he's got enough money to throw away that he could probably send over a bit of cash our way, because if he's going to throw it away anyway, then it may as well go to some good.
Yeah, I need to buy more dinner rolls and cookies and pies for Thanksgiving. So with that in mind, before I go and start baking away for the week, any other big news on the horizon to keep a lookout for? I know in the U.S. it's going to be a little bit quiet, but Charlie, we've had some big stories drop in the past few days.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had record handle in Pennsylvania, which seems pretty big. Louisiana, record handle and record revenue in October. So sportsbooks are doing well this NFL season. I'm sure we'll see that continue as we, edge closer towards the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I listened to the Kentucky Sports Wagering Advisory Committee today, and while they approved a couple of random sports and said okay to the ESPN bet transfer that already happened, still no word yet on official numbers. So I think they're the only state pending from September, and we still need to hear what happened there in October. But Pennsylvania, really interesting that state has basically been live for 4.5 years online at this point, and that you can still post records and bring in new people is really impressive. Dropped just now. Go check out MLB, NHL, and NBA have worked together to create a new responsible gambling PSA that's going to debut on Tuesday night as part of the NBA in-season tournament during a commercial break. Check out this ad. I think it's kind of interesting. It kind of leans into what we love about sports, which is that they are unpredictable. And I think that's something we can all relate to. And then they put the betting angle on it so keep in mind, anything can happen at any time, and you need to be aware of that when you're betting. It's an interesting message. I think it probably resonates a little better than, as much as I love the Have a Game Plan campaign that AGA has done, NFL did kind of, have a game plan PSA 2 years ago, and planning doesn't really inspire the joy and emotion that the errant kick or the missed last second shot does. That I'll be curious to see how this one lands. Okay, with that in mind, then I'm going to go proof some dough and get ready to take a break, feast, and catch up with you guys next week. But don't worry, Charlie will continue to hold down the fort for us at SBC Americas and Canadian Gaming Business. So tune in there and tune in next week for a new episode of iGaming Daily.
SBC Media.